self-existence sever the net of afflictions. Brandish the sword of knowledge. Behold the abode of aggregates as empty. In this way enlightenment shall be reached. I have opened the door to the city of nectar and thoroughly entered into its abode. I have utterly revealed the vessel of nectar. With its juice I have been filled. I have beaten the sublime drum of the Dharma. I have blown Dharma's supreme conch. I have rained a sublime shower of Dharma. I have ignited Dharma's supreme torch. I conquered the potent enemy, the afflictions, and hoisted Dharma's victory banner high. I rescued beings from the ocean of existence and sealed the path of the three lower realms. For beings scorched by the fire of affliction, without support or cooperative forces, I soothed those burned by delusion's flame, and with nectar juice satisfied such beings. For inconceivably many eons I venerated inconceivably many Buddhas, fervently seeking Dharmakaya, resolute in my vows, I engaged in bodhisattva deeds. I gave my hands, eyes, and legs, the supreme part the head, beloved daughters and sons, crystals, gems, pearls, ornaments, and gold, lapis, and various jewels. A person might cut and chop all that grows on this earth, bushes and trees, grasses and forests, in all the 1,000 worlds. If he ground them to powder and reduced them to dust, a mound reaching the end of space could be built and split into 3 parts. If knowledge of all the dust on earth, infinite units of 1,000 world spheres, was bestowed upon just one being, that being would be extremely superior. Possessed of exalted wisdom, he might count all those particles in that mound of dust. But the extent of the conqueror's knowledge cannot be known. Even in countless tens of millions of eons, the vitality of just a single moment of the conqueror's omniscient wisdom cannot be measured or gauged. This ends the 6th chapter, the chapter on emptiness. From the King of Glorious Sutras, the sublime golden light. This is Darren Littlejohn. Welcome to the 12-Step Buddhist Podcast, episode 104, Mindfully Manic, and how to enter the retreat space as a Buddhist in recovery. Concluding chapter 6 on emptiness on the Sutra of Golden Light. How you doing? How's everything going? I got a note from someone. I like getting notes from people. info@ compassionaterecovery.us. Some of the stuff was hard to hear. It's hard to understand anyways, and then it's hard to hear, especially with the chimes in the back. And I always have wind chimes wherever I go. And right now there's thunder. I'm oftentimes in mountains, and there's a lot of wind and thunder. That's the situation that I'm in. That's where I'm reporting from. If you think about it that way, reporting from the field, the retreat hut, as it were, always remembering something that Venerable Rubina had said to me. Venerable Rubina Korten, my refuge Lama, the story of the nun who got put in some prison in Burma or something, and she said, well, she was unjustly imprisoned, something about being Buddhist or something innocent. She said, this is not my cell, this is my retreat hut. And she took that Buddhist view. And I've recently started to, I haven't started taking this view. I've had this view, tried to apply this view for a really long time. I don't know, I recently am finding myself in a similar situation where patterns repeat themselves. And really the only thing to do, I remember this goes back to Larry Christensen, who was my Zen teacher at that time. He did lose his license for trying to get female patients to marry him or something. I don't, just some like really weird shit. It's posted publicly. I'm sorry for Larry. That was his affliction. But, the notion of entering the retreat space, entering, sitting on the cushion, and it was a pretty insightful thing because Larry also was a psychologist, or is, no, I think he was. He lost his license there, well, at least in Oregon, but, he said, Darren, you look at it as an affliction, but, you're lucky because you have to practice. And this was, oh, golly dang, 2002, 3, 4, something like that. And it's 2023, and there's been a lot of years of practice and experience and life since then. But one of my current instructors said the exact same thing in a different way today, and I just think that it fits with. So I want to try to explain this, and I apologize if I'm a little bit all over the place because I don't have this scripted out, but I've had this instructor since 2010 or 11 in our Dzogchen community, and I know him pretty well. And I asked him today at the end of a session through Zoom, I said, look, he was describing some moments when, hey, you should be braced because sometimes a practitioner can, have a high anxiety or, the bells are going off, but it's really, and so on. And, this could happen to anyone or everyone and so forth at some point. And, I've known him for a long time, and he doesn't really, it's hard to get my particular point across and understood often. So I really try to frame it. I don't know if I framed the question, but the answer I got, I said, well, what if your fire alarm is going off? If some people are always like this, it's not like it just happens sometimes as the result of practice. It's how we wake up. It's how we go to sleep. It's how we've been. The fire alarm's always going off. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, take a look back at a couple of the episodes. Take a look at my book, Compassionate Recovery, available on Amazon. Order it through Barnes & Noble, Walmart. You can go to the website and so forth. Look at the 12-step Buddhist for the foundational principles of how to start integrating with 12-step principles and then into with Buddhism or with some aspects of Buddhist principle and thought and practice, at least at a fundamental level, I think. And then, when you start to understand the neurology of addiction and the neurology of adverse childhood experiences of a high nature, and I'm not a neurologist or a neurobiologist, and I don't mean to sound like I think I am, but when you start to figure out how some of the pieces fit together on what happens, and things become clear. That's why I wrote Compassionate Recovery, because my entire existence of an addict in recovery was perfectly clear to me, and I made that book to tell you what the light went on, right? I mean, I put 440 pages in there. It's not fully professionally edited because I didn't have an extra $2,500, but here's the deal. If enough people bought it, I would give a new version. But the thing is, I don't know, the idea, it's all right there. For me, it's crystal clear epiphany. It's like a spiritual experience. That's what Compassionate Recovery is. It taught me how to look at myself and my experience when I'm being mindful, when I'm being present, when I'm doing practice, and try to understand and to train the mind to say, hey, this is what's going on. And these are some options I have instead of just fully reacting. Does anybody relate? Give me a high five. Can I get an amen? Thank you very much. Because, really, and speaking of amen and taking refuge, we can put our palms together at the forehead anytime. We can put our palms together at the heart. We can put our palms together at the top of the head, the forehead, the throat, and the heart. Look at a Buddha, statue, image, sacred text, and say, I and all beings take refuge in the Buddha. I and all beings take refuge in the Dharma. I and all beings take refuge in the Sangha. I and all beings take refuge in the Buddha. I and all beings take refuge in the Dharma. I and all beings take refuge in the Sangha. And we start to understand what this means over the years. We say it 3 times, I and all beings take refuge in the Buddha. I and all beings take refuge in the Dharma. The sacred teaching, I and all beings take refuge in the Sangha. The holy brothers and sisters who burn it up for us because, boy, they burn it up for us in our face, and because they force us to look at all of that, and they're there to support us, and we support them. If we understand community and Sangha, at least I think that's what it means to me, helping each other out, I think, and being really cool and really trying to help each other out and being bodhisattvas in practice, like not just with our mouths, but with our feet and with our attitudes and our actions. So if you relate to the things I talk about in my personal experience as a Buddhist in recovery, and some of the things that I share about, if I can get the transcripts going here, I think there's a way to automatically do it. I'll look into it. Thank you for the suggestion. Please email further suggestions and any feedback that you might have, honestly. info@compassionaterecovery.us. I realize that the sound situation does change. It is a little bit unlike it is being in the field, because for some reason I have a really turbulent housing stability problem that I have not been able to solve. And I don't want to speculate. I have a lot of speculations, but I just kind of wanted to just share it because it's just, I just left a situation that was very difficult. That was sort of in a box, and I didn't, I was under the control of other people, and I couldn't get out of it until I could get out of it. And I was offered a safe haven, a place kind of far away, but I made several trips and went through hell. I took wrong turns. I really have a difficulty driving nowadays. I have a difficulty in keeping the focus on the road and worrying about the vehicle being too old to be on the road and having no air conditioning and all this. And it's really been a heck of a journey. I mean, it's like, I don't know, for me, it's really been hard since 2020, but if I look back at my life, there's just a whole series of these types of incidents where something about me, it just blows the circuits of other people. I don't know why. If I could understand it, I would reel it back because I don't want to cause anybody to be disturbed. But I've gone into places. I stayed with a super Buddhist lady once. She lost her mind in one day and insisted that I leave immediately with all my stuff immediately. And she was calling the police if I didn't leave immediately. And I was like, it's like Saturday morning. I have all my stuff in there. She asked me to move in there. I don't know. I can't explain that. I can speculate, but I won't right now. Because whatever it is, it was very weird. Another lady who went to my retreats, read my books, this and that, invited me to stay with her in another town. And okay, well, it's a nice house, but it's a nice neighborhood, but it was in the basement and there was a rat, and they didn't appear to want to get rid of the rat. I don't know. It's, my dog mysteriously got out, and I got a phone call from somebody while I was working that the dog was like 4 blocks away. I'm like, I had to leave work and take 45 minutes to get there to go get my dog. It was a very weird and very strange situation, because then when I found another place, I realized I think somebody let my dog out. I don't know what's going on there. There's like a rat and no one's doing anything about it, and I'm downstairs on a mattress on the floor. And there's, I'm like, this is really strange. So I found another place to go. And I went, to get my stuff, which was rather loosely packed in IKEA bags. And the lady freaked out that I was trying to leave. She started screaming at me, taking my bags, throwing my statues on the ground, and all this kind of stuff. I had to get somebody else to come over and help me get out of that situation. I had to call police to stand by so I could just get my stuff out. I don't know what in the heck was going on there. I really don't. And the lady was really nice. And then something happened. and she didn't want me to leave, and there's a bunch of these. There was another one where I moved into a place to, rent a room, and the lady kind of didn't tell me that the guy was a blazing alcoholic in the room 2 feet away from me, and he was like staggering drunk, bouncing off the walls right outside the room, and I'm like not living in that. As I was putting my stuff out, she started freaking out and screaming and coming back and forth and back and forth and getting more and more hysterical. And I went out in the alley. I couldn't fit everything in my Honda at the time. I went out in the alley, and there was 2 guys, Hispanic laborer guys, going out there doing the yard work and so forth that didn't speak any English. I was like, hey, I'll give you $50 if you take this load of stuff over to this other place, about 5 miles from here. And they're like, okay, fine, no problem. Those guys turned, this was in another town, and so those guys didn't go straight. They went in the right lane, and they went north, and I went west. And all my stuff was there, all my clothes. I had nothing. I went to yoga, and I was like, I have nothing. I have no clothes. And these guys took off with my whole load of all this stuff because the lady was going so nuts. I just had to get out of there. It was distressing. Another time, those guys called me later because they went through, in fact, yeah, the same friend who just recently helped me out, they found his phone number in a paper in another state and called him, and then he called me and said, these guys have your stuff. And I went, wow, they have my stuff, okay. And I went and got it. This was like a month later. But you think these are strange. There's more. There's just so many of them. And it started, that thing started after I left Portland in 2013. And as I was leaving Portland, my friend was shot and killed, a really lovely friend of mine. As I was leaving, right then, that month, within a few days, something like that, it was a super weird way to, timing to be leaving. And then very difficult, very, very difficult, and a lot of obstacles, and getting hooked into the relationship with a cluster B narcissistic sociopath, borderline personality. You can Google that, look on YouTube for a lady called Peace and Love. Her name is Peace and Love, and she has videos on the cluster B narcissists that will heal you if you follow her. Just follow her hard. I followed her hard. Peace and Love, I think. I'm pretty sure that's her name. She's still out there. But my inability to detach from that trauma bonding, that Stockholm syndrome for like 5 years, it cost me everything. I lost all my possessions more than once. The possessions that I had reaccumulated after having a bipolar fallout in the mid-90s. Rebuilt everything from getting sober in the late 90s, 97. Rebuilt everything for 15, 16 years, and then lost everything, all of it. Guitars, statues, sacred texts, biographies, tons of books, clothes, memorabilia, keepsakes, recovery books, materials. How'd you lose that, son? I'll tell you about that in a book. It's going to take a book. It's called Get the Fuck Out. That's the book. GTFO, How to Free Yourself of Your Addiction to Toxic Relationships. I'm going to speak from experience on that one, and I'm an expert in it now. That will be forthcoming. It cost me everything, like any kind of an addiction, like alcoholism would cost you. Gambling would cost you. Pill addiction would cost you. It would cost you everything. Addiction takes you to the end. It takes you to the end until you're done, and then you're turned out. Boom. Death, jails, institutions. Okay? I'm not even really getting into all of the details, but there's a pattern. And I don't know what happens, but ever since I was, rousted out of that stability, by, chasing some tail, into instability with my housing situation. And, I had a good solid year or two here or there because I could financially manage, barely though, ever. And it just got worse and worse and worse. Financially, worse and worse and worse. I'm dependent on the kindness of others. I can't do it all on my own. And, it just happened again, just now. I was sort of helped out of a situation, and then I was in what looked like a perfect situation, and I was told all kinds of really nice things, and then not long later, it was polar opposite. It was like the switch was flipped, and I'm still me. In fact, I'm doing better every day, and started teaching yoga again, and working out, and even speaking the words of yoga, and helping people with it. It gives me everything that I need, and I realize my incompleteness at being unable to do that. But I'm really kind of stuck, and I'm at a loss for this housing instability situation where I'm comfortable, I'm loved, everything looks cool. There was a guy one time who was a listener to this podcast, in fact. Friend, girlfriend or something had recommended it. He heard about something somehow on Facebook or something, and he said, hey, you can come stay with me. This is in another town. And I went out to this nice, suburban house. I lugged, carloads of heavy things, brought them all in there. I spent one night. The next morning, the guy was sitting there with a cup of coffee. He said, have a seat. I went out there, and he said, I need you to go. He says, I need you out. And I go, okay, well, I need you out. I go, but he just looked at me, and I went, oh, wow. That was mind-blowing. And I faced it, and I handled it, and I did what needed to be done, but it involved like running around with getting stuff in a storage locker, hustling up something, sitting on your phone, trying to find another room to rent, and all these kinds of things. This is what happens when you're living outside of your means. So, I had to try to move to other places that are more affordable, but not be in a really terrible environment. It's really tough in America. Housing in America is not easy, especially for an older person and someone who's, got disabilities. It's really, you're at a disability if you have high ACEs and addiction. If you're in recovery, most states, because I believe it's federal, double check on it, but there's a reason why people receive vocational rehabilitation benefits for having addiction issues. It is seen as an illness and this sort of thing. So, you're at a disability anyways in life through ACEs and through addictions and so forth. I know a lot of people slash their way through it and make it work, but all I can do is do what Larry said and what Steve just said today. And I said, what if the fire alarm is always on? And he said, well, then, Darren, if it's on 24/7, then you're going to have to show up and be on the job 24/7. Doing what? Practicing. What do we practice? Everything that we talk about. And many, many things. Let's just say mindful presence. Let's say not resisting the condition of where one finds oneself in any given moment. Have an inhale. Fill it up nice and deep. Inhale a little bit more, open the throat, and relax the whole body and say, linger before you breathe in. Do this practice. Breathe in. Fill up. Let it go. Pause empty. You can do that for a 4 count. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, stay empty for 4. Boy, old Steve in San Diego teaches that one. I'll tell you what, that's a good one. Try it. It's hard. Try 2. When you're in the middle of a really pumping, thumping class, sometimes it's 1. Breathe in 1, hold 1. Can't even do it. It's too much. But it really does help bring us down, bring the nervous system back down. I'll leave you with those thoughts. We'll pick it up later because I don't have a solution to the mystery. All I can say is I'm going to follow my instructor's advice, old and new, and keep at it and keep turning the wheel of Dharma, so to speak, talking about it, practicing it, doing it, keeping it alive, like the Sutra said. Talk more about things next week. I appreciate you. You want to support this show, support the efforts in the writings, go over to the podcast.compassionaterecovery.us website and drop some ducats in the bucket. It's super appreciated. Talk to you guys soon. Peace out and namaste.